I'm a Disney girl, so customer service is big. All right. Well, welcome to the Through the Lens with the EMS Wizard podcast, the Terry Show.
That's me.
That's not it. That's not how that goes at all. You still done a better job than John would have. Still done a
Definitely.
much better job. Yeah.
I was thinking about replacing him.
Well, I am better looking than him. So, I mean, if you're looking for a better face,
Correct.
yes.
Mark, how do you feel? How do you feel about that?
That's an easy decision to make. I don't have to worry about him interrupting me or cutting anybody else off, and yeah,
I mean,
Yeah.
it might work.
doing all that work. So it's the three of us again for this episode.
Yeah, thank you for being my guests.
Yeah, for the host for the Terry Show.
It's the Terry Show for sure.
Yes,
Well,
sir.
Are you deep in the heart of Texas, like right now? That's
A
why your
gentleman
background.
never asks, and a lady never tells.
Oh, so it's like that, huh? Okay. Anyway, so last time, well, not actually the last time, but whenever Kathy was actually a guest on the podcast, I don't know, 20, 30 something odd episodes ago, one of our conversations we got into that we really wanted to kind of delve deeper into was customer service. And that's something that we talk about a lot in the officer training. And I thought that's a whole thing that could be in and of itself almost. You can spend a full 2 days easily on that topic and having conversations with people and how important it is and different things. So, Kathia, why don't you start us off, kind of maybe pick up where we kind of left off a little bit in our conversation with customer service and how important you think it is to EMS.
9 years ago, I wondered, I always said EMS has got to be, it's the same business, it's all a business, it's just a different product. And then I quickly realized that's not how EMS is run right now, but why is it not? And Walter, who is not with us, of course, he comes from the same kind of background I do. Restaurant
What?
business, customer service business. I mean, I worked at Disney for 3 years. That's kind of the foundation of customer service. But why don't we?
Walter didn't work at Disney.
No, he did not. No.
Where did Walter work? I don't remember.
Didn't he did some? I
Like-
thought he said.
Grandparents' farm. He taught eating sausage and
Lighting the lanterns on the street at night.
yeah. The British
Holding
are
on,
coming.
holding on to call list. Isn't Walter the one with the call list?
dial
where it was
down.
like a phone tree, the dial down? That's what it is.
Yeah.
Or Walter, he's not here to defend
Hoy,
himself.
hoy.
He's not. But customer service is huge. You have some people that sit in the back of the ambulance and type at the computer, and you can hear crickets in the back. And that patient has probably got 1,001 things going on through their head, and there's no communication. There's no, hey, how are you feeling? Or it's not necessarily small talk, but in the restaurant business, we did like the 10 steps of service. There's got to be somewhere in there if we have a systematic approach in EMS to tackle some kind of customer service within that systematic approach.
So what if you were taking the restaurant 10 steps of service? What is the EMS 10 steps of service?
We suck at introducing ourselves to
Okay.
our patients.
Okay.
That would be the starting point to that, is going, hey, I'm Kathia. I'm here to take care of you today. Why'd you call EMS? Or find a different way to say it, because some people can say it and it can sound like you're inconveniencing them when you say, why'd you call today? Or what's going on today?
Correct. Yeah.
The
Mhm.
eye contact, kneeling down. Some people hover over patients or hover over whoever they're there for, and they don't get onto an eye level.
And I can think back to, and I've probably said this in a couple officer classes before, just that one simple change of how you introduce yourself, because that's what determines if you're stepping off on the right foot or not with some with some patients, right? And how I may introduce myself at 3 o'clock in the afternoon it's be a little bit different than how I am at 3 o'clock in the morning. Especially if
Absolutely.
we've been busy or what have you. But the story I think back to was one of the students in one of the classes we were teaching one time. Their agency was having issues with some complaints in a particular area in a particular community, and this community, it was just this one area, and these complaints were, that your people are rude, and a lot of the complaints they were getting, you know, were from people that they had never got complaints on before. They know that these individuals are professional and courteous, and I just don't believe that. But after you hear it a few times as an administrator, you're like, there's got to be something to this. What is it? So luckily, instead of the leaders at the time pointing the fingers at the people, y'all got to do better, they looked deeper into it to find out the cause of the problem. And the cause of the problem was how they were introducing themselves to this group, to this particular community. And so they said, okay, well, we can fix this. Let's come up with one generic introduction that everybody would use on every single call that would just kind of fit all of the circumstances that is going to appear or at least sound like it's professional, no matter how you say it. And I can't remember the dude from the EMS officer class that told this story, but if you're listening to this episode, please reach out, leave a comment, something on this YouTube video or on the podcast or whatever, and let me know what your saying was, because I have forgotten since what the actual saying was that your agency come up with. But they started using that, that introduction in their agency across the board, and the complaints stopped entirely.
Wow.
So, I mean, just
That's
that one little
amazing.
thing has that much of an impact,
So I was watching, much to Mrs. Sheehy's chagrin, I'll watch these YouTube videos on the Apple TV because we're bougie and we just don't have the whatever it is that dumpster people we watch their YouTube videos on.
We're
And
dumpster people.
yeah, that's a whole thing. And so one of the videos that I was watching was the honor guard in Arlington National Cemetery.
Hmm.
And so it was a whole thing, but this one piece grabbed me, and my words, not theirs, but they talked about the presentation of the American flag to the surviving person, that surviving family member, and how they talked for about 1 minute just on the positioning of the person who's presenting that flag on behalf of the president of the United States and a grateful nation. And they talked about how you come down to the eye level of that person because you are respecting them and it is an honorable thing that you're doing. And you don't lean over them, you don't tower over them, you don't do anything like that, but you even some of the gruffest sergeant majors adopt a very personal tone to when they're communicating with that person. And so if there's customer service in Arlington National Cemetery, why I think y'all captured something where I was just like, I've never thought of how we introduce ourselves, but one of the sayings I use, words matter, and not just the words that we use, but the tone that we use. And
Absolutely.
and at 3 in the afternoon, it might be, hey, what's going on? And at 3 in the morning, it might be, hey, what is going on? Same words, just that different.
I mean, I
Yeah.
can tell you just a month ago, it was 1 o'clock the day of the eclipse. It had been 7 hours that I had not seen the building, and it was 1 o'clock in the morning, and we were outside of our district. And I looked at my partner and I said, uh-oh. Just the woman's stance told me this might be an interaction that is going to call for everyone's going to have to dial back and dial down. And of course, there was a lack of communication through dispatch and what we got because we were in a different district. And she took my response to, why did you call us? Because my partner's taking out the stretcher and the call was for somebody who had potentially overdosed. So here is this person standing in my way of someone who is potentially in a life-threatening state. And I'm trying to walk and talk, but it's 1 o'clock in the morning and I'm tired. I haven't seen the building. And so I turn around, I'm like, okay, well, what can I do for you? And she took that as I was being defensive. And 7 o'clock in the morning me probably would have came off a lot better than 1 o'clock in the morning me. And a lot of us don't listen to our partners when our partners are like, hey, how about we reset this? Where my partner intervened, it was like, hey, how about you talk to me? And I looked at her and I said, that's probably a great idea. And there's a lot, that's customer service right there because you're separating yourself from an interaction that could be escalated. Sometimes we escalate situations in EMS and we don't mean
No,
to. No,
that
not at
never
all.
happens on an ambulance.
Not at all. No.
But the one thing that Terry mentioned earlier, talking about the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. Whenever I think about those guys that worked there, the first thing that comes to my mind is just the level of discipline those guys have and how consistent they are, and just that level of discipline, only comes through just the strictest of training, right? And most consistent of training. And I think that's the other big piece that we have to look at is the what do we do for training in customer service? We talk about it a lot in officer training, but we're talking about, we're talking to more oftentimes, supervisors, administrators, maybe FTOs and everything. We're not really, talking about customer service directly to our field providers frequently, because, well, yeah, we've got to check the boxes. We've got to have so many hours of cardiac, so many hours of medical, so on and so forth to renew our credential and to meet whatever our agency's requirements are. But what about that professional development? That's only really required for instructors in the state of North Carolina. But what about professional development for our field staff? Do we have that professional development opportunity even for our field staff? I know some agencies in the state that they have a pretty robust professional development outside of the clinical care of things that they do routinely with their field staff. And I think that's, those guys do a great job and it's a great model to go by. But I feel like we need to start this whole customer service training and discussion whenever we're in EMT school. We need to start having these discussions early on and start, practicing, having that emotional intelligence, being inflicted with that stress and not reacting to that stress. And, that kind of comes back to, that high fidelity simulation that we would love to see in our classrooms. Sometimes we get that. Sometimes we probably don't.
But you're also having to break those barriers of the you called, we hauled mentality and those people that are out there going, well, you called us. Like, this isn't Burger King. You can't have it your way. We have a set of protocols we abide by. Like how do we adjust that? So if we can teach them in EMT school, great. Okay. But what about the people that are out there right now that could make a big difference? Because you've got those calls you've got somebody who's intoxicated. PD isn't always the greatest at de-escalating those situations, and neither are we in EMS, where PD's like, you can either go with them or you can go with us, right? That happens a lot. Well, we can escalate it by going, well, that's not how that goes. And here you've got this person who's acting erratic, right? How do you diffuse that? That's customer service, is turning that around and reminding them, hey, we're here for your medical attention. Why don't you come with me? There's just, how do you break the habit of people already in EMS to develop that customer service that already have that state of mind of, you called, we hauled, I'm here.
Gary, why are you holding your microphone like that?
Yeah, I feel like he's
Because
about to
I'm
get serious.
I'm gonna make that change. And so I think if we go back, well,
I love
you don't
it.
like my Michael Jackson
No,
reference.
I love it.
Yeah, you have to start with the man or the woman. Yeah. So like I say in officer class, you have to look at the man or the woman in the mirror and So I go back a couple of episodes and I would ask how many agencies throughout the state when the Gaston director, when he talked about, when we had two Marks on here, crazy, when he talked about how he sat down and he gives his expectations to his new employees. And I think that's part of it. I
Mm-hmm.
think figuring out how you meet in the middle, because Kathia is 1,000% right, and that's better than 100%. That street provider mentality of you call, we haul, and so you've got that pervasive mentality, environment, thought process at the rank and file, that field provider level, but then you've got your upper level administration, and are they setting that appropriate tone, and how is that meeting happening between those two? And I think it's a convoluted process, but I think some of it is just like this. You have to have that conversation to say, hey, what you did wasn't so great. And the example that I use when we talk about some of these things is uh, back in the 90s, Kathia, when you were probably doing like your eighth grade dance or something or another like that. You were slow
Depends
dancing
on
to
which end of the 90s, because in 91 I was in kindergarten. So
90, 99, 99. Which, as we've Mark, you were in middle school, and then, or were you in elementary
Mm-hmm.
school in 99?
Yeah,
yeah,
99. Yeah, I would have been in middle school, like
Yeah.
seventh grade, maybe.
Mark and I aren't far from each
Yeah.
other.
Yeah. So both of
Yeah.
you, when you were slow dancing, probably not with each other, but because Kathia's in Florida, Mark's in North
Right.
Carolina. But I'm glad I could make that awkward for both of you. But
Great.
in the 90s, when some of us got our paramedics, 12 leads were not a thing. And so
Mm.
the 12 lead was an appendix in the back of the paramedic book. And we had to do some additional training on 12 leads in order to keep our paramedic. And, that was 2000, 2001 that we were doing that training, summer of 2000 or summer of 2001. And so I think the first thing is you have to talk about it, and then you have to make in the words. I think I said this at his memorial service at John Wilson's. You got to make a whole last thing about it. So
But you
You know,
have people who would never think to be in any kind of retail or food or hospitality or anything like that because they're like, I just don't like people. Think about how many EMS people don't like people and they're in EMS. How many times have you guys looked at somebody in food service, Mr. Yelp down there? Um,
Yelp Elite,
you'll
and
believe,
third
you're
year.
like, if you
not a
don't like
leaf.
your job, why are you here? I'm sure there's patients that could say the same from us, whether it's 7 a.m. and we just got on shift or it's 3 a.m. I'm a believer in customer service.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I think to kind of expand even upon that, I think back to a call that I was chasing a truck on, to try to avoid getting into a deep war story. But the paramedic was ready. The patient was irate, what have you. He was ready to get some Haldol Versed on board and everything. He was getting ready to draw it up. I was like, just hang on a minute, right? Just chill, and a little bit of therapeutic communication with the patient. The patient chilled right out. Nice, easy ride to the hospital. Didn't have to, get so invasive and sedate the patient. There's a lot of people that were probably very quick, pre ketamine in Colorado incident. A lot of people really quick to be sedating patients in those scenarios whenever it's just a little bit of therapeutic communication. And I saw that need for the patient, but I also saw I need to make sure that I'm doing this in the right way for the provider too, right? Because the provider had it made up in their mind, this is what we need to do. And like, hang on, just chill for a minute. Let's talk about this. Let's try this first. Let's start with the least invasive. And then having that conversation, having that hot wash afterward to kind of discuss the call, you have to recognize that provider as another customer, right? Because
Right.
whenever we talk about customers in EMS, we always think about that's the patients, that's the bystanders, that's the public, the taxpayers, so on and so forth. But we also have to acknowledge that our colleagues are customers. The nurses at the hospital are customers. Our fellow, firemen and law enforcement responders, they're customers. Well, yeah, I mean, it depends
Eh,
on what shift's working. But anyhow, the we have to recognize that we have this whole group of or groupings of expectations from different people. Like you were talking about earlier, Terry, with Chief Lanford laying out those expectations for people. We kind of need to be aware of what the expectations are for not just our chief, but also from the people that we're responsible for, the other people that we work with on the regular. What are those expectations? And sometimes they're reasonable, and sometimes they're probably not very realistic. And that's where that effective communication comes into play, right? Then this can just snowball into a whole nother conversation. I can get out of customer service and getting into communication and its essentials. But
No, because I think you hit on something at it because you can label it. It's barbecue, and you can relabel it a couple of different things. But I would say if we're talking about internal customer service, one of the greatest things that is a factor in that internal customer service is that communication.
absolutely. You
mm-hmm.
can't have customer service without communication, without having a balance of both. They are definitely together. It's not a whole other topic.
Yeah, and that's you've got to be, and specifically talking from a leadership perspective, you've got to be that leader that always answers the phone more oftentimes than not. And you can't be that person that looks at their phone. No, it's after 5 o'clock,
Not
or
today.
I'm off shift, or not today. Not today, devil. We ain't doing that. No, if that phone rings, you should answer it, because the first time you don't answer it, it could have made a difference to one
Mm-hmm.
of your employees, or you've already started this trend of, well, he or she never answers the phone whenever I call. So
Right.
why do I feel like they're going to listen to me anytime I want to talk to them? Because they can't even do something as simple as pressing a button on their phone whenever I know more than likely it's right there in their hand. They're looking at it, right? So just simple little things. I'm not talking about you've got to set up complex meetings. I'm not saying you've got to, write these, eloquent emails or anything. Just communicating with your people. It's easy. It's simple,
Just use
right?
words.
Yeah. Use your words, put them
Use your
together.
words. For me, I don't care what words you use, just use your words. I can read in between the lines because I've got young people, I've got older people, and my older people, they are grumpy, grumpy, grumpy. And I don't listen to their body language. I listen to their words because they have value.
Hey,
They
are you
really
older
do.
people? Are you grumpy?
Are you grumpy? Me or
Apparently
Terry?
tonight I'm older people and I feel
Are you?
targeted
Wait a minute.
Hey,
and
he's communicating.
abused.
Listen to him.
No.
Yes, I'm using my words right now.
Oh, well, I'm going to use my words and be like, I was not talking about you. I was talking about my people.
Oh, my bad.
If you feel old, that's on you.
One of us is a grandfather.
Hey,
Not
I
me.
nicknamed you Big Papa, right? So Big Papa Terry Train or Train Terry? I don't remember.
Don't I don't know where.
So that's not old. So it's okay to be a grandfather.
There's nothing wrong with being a grandfather.
There's grandfathers in their 30s. Are you calling them old because they're grandfathers?
Back to because I want to finish a couple of things
30-year
on
old
internal
grandfather. Okay.
customer service. It was a redirect.
Yeah.
So with all three of us having done multiple jobs over the years, how do you what's that advice that you would give? And we'll start with Kathia because, well, ladies first. Chivalry is not dead. I believe in the destruction of the patriarchy, but I'm still a gentleman. What advice do you give to that new EMS administrator, that new EMS officer, that I I am balancing the work needs, the personal needs? What is what is one piece of advice that you would have for that and ensuring that good internal customer service to our employees?
Definitely what Mark said, answer your phone, be there for them. But you, in turn, need to have that balance of, hey, make it clear to your crews, this is who you can contact. I'm off right now. Communicate that with them and just be open. Figure out how to communicate with each of your staff, which means you have to get to know them. And you have to be that example. At the end of the day, whether you're an officer in leadership, not in leadership, if you want your crews and your team to be a certain way, you have to be the way that you want them to be. So if you want them to be available to you to come into work or to talk to you, you also have to have that door open for them.
So being present and
Being present, yes.
having that relationship. Okay. Mark, what would you say?
I would say you need to be able to admit you don't know something. You need to be able to say, I'm not sure, but I want to make sure that we're doing the right thing. So let me ask and find out. Right. That's the one thing I think we have one of the most difficult times with is saying that, outside of just the fact that we have to communicate it, but just to be able to admit that I don't really know, but I'm going to find out because I want to do the best thing for my employees, for my patient. I want to make sure that I'm doing the right thing, doing what's best. Is there a better option that I don't know? I might think I know something, but, in the famous words of Billy Langston, you can't know what you don't know. Sometimes you have to ask to find out.
Trying to take that and distill that down and not lose your barbecue flavor. Vulnerability might be one of the catchy things because admitting you don't know something.
Yeah,
And
vulnerability.
sometimes we think that as soon as we admit, hey, I don't know about this. And so that could be a couple episodes when we talked about that OSHA stuff. Hey, I haven't heard about that stuff. Let's find this together. Let's pull this up.
Right.
Let's read over this or any of the other changes that are in the industry. But it really sounds like to me, if you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and make that change.
All right. Okay, man in the mirror.
He just had to do it. Just had to do it.
We
I
were
do have
going
to ask
there.
a question for my buddy Justin Bowers there. Being you've got the Texas background back there, did you try some barbecue? And you said something about barbecue earlier. Made me think about it. Did you try some barbecue?
Yeah.
While you were in Texas recently or sometime recently?
Every time.
Is it better than North Carolina? I need to know.
Yeah.
Really?
Like how much better?
Hey, so I want you to think about, man, my first pickup truck was this like, I don't know, 1998 Ford Ranger.
Okay.
And it was a manual transmission. It didn't even have the suicide doors, but it had that, what they call it, that extra
The
cab where you
suicide
had that
doors.
The
you
seats
had
that fold down in the back?
didn't have the door. So I'd open the driver or passenger door and then fold forward the driver or the passenger seat. Yeah, and it had that fold down sideways facing seat.
Seat of death.
And that, yeah, and the bed in my Ford Ranger was a step side pickup truck. So I don't know what you could carry in the back. A cooler. Let's be honest, I'm not the type of person who's throwing a whole bunch of stuff in the back of their truck anyways, but that's North Carolina barbecue. And I don't think I'm from here, but I'm allowed to say that I'm from here-ish. I have a ruling from a resident Superior Court judge since I graduated from high school in North Carolina that I can say that I am from North Carolina, but no. Brisket is king.
I love some brisket.
And if it's done just right, it melts in your mouth like butter. This is how, now you got me on a roll. in Texas at a place in Houston, got brisket, and the guy said, "What would you like as your sides?" And so I got baked beans and I got coleslaw. And the guy looked at me and he said, "Are you from North Carolina?" And I said, "Huh?" And he said, "You must be from North Carolina, probably Eastern North Carolina, because the only people that get coleslaw are from North Carolina, specifically Eastern North Carolina." So, yeah, I don't like that
Oh
silly mustard
gosh.
sauce like our wayward cousins used to the South. I don't
Mm.
mind Virginia barbecue. I do like pork. But that beef brisket is this is why I think it I can't make this at home. I don't have a smoker. I've tried. Even when I had a smoker, I could never make really great brisket. Like
Had to
Brisket is good
omelets.
practice.
though.
Yeah, omelets. When you were a kid, omelets had a magical appeal because you were getting out at that fancy restaurant. And so now that I can make an omelet, it's not as special or fancy. Now that I can make French toast, or quiche. Like it's good, but it's not. But brisket, can't make that.
A quiche. What's a
Can't
quiche?
I can't make that.
You don't know what a quiche
What's
is?
that?
Yeah, it's French
Quiche.
for
Yeah.
eggs.
Eggs
Sounds weird.
And
Sounds
Probably
terrible.
good.
in a pie pan.
You
With
put an
all-
egg in a
Yeah, that's
pie
the best
pan.
part about the quiche is the pie crust.
It is.
Y'all are weird.
It's a great
Yeah.
breakfast.
You know what else is great? Customer service. Thank you, Kathia, for
It is.
setting us on a course tonight, deep in the heart of Texas.